Alright, so I'm starting a new channel here for construction stuff. And it just so happens that today we are starting out with grid ceilings, in particular drywall suspension grid ceilings. And the first topic I'm going to go over here is going to be when you're hanging your support wires for your mains, is going to be trapezes. As you can see, I got my mark for my main center right there, and it's right below this duct. So I need to run a trapeze to drop my wire. And yes, that looks a little off center, but that's because this is a little, my guy shot the wire a little far over here, so I'm going to put, it's going to be a little splayed, but that's fine. Splaying is okay as long as it's not too excessive. What you want to make your trapeze out of is something quite durable, like drywall suspension main, or if it's not too big, like this one's not too all that large, a drywall suspension cross T. You cannot use ceiling grid cross T; they are far too weak. For something about this size, though, a ceiling grid main may be okay. You may need to check with your inspectors and whatnot, but this should be fine. Now, what I want to talk about is when you go to do this, you can see how I ran my wires here. I cut the end and used the existing holes because that allows your wire to be pinched tight just like it would be on a normal main. But you notice I have it upside down. Let me get down, give you a better angle there. So you can see I ran it upside down and I drilled a new hole right there to be closer to where I actually want it, so that when it's supporting that main, it's going to end up pulling itself over and getting it off of touching that duct. So it's little things like that that make a huge difference in the quality of your product you're putting together. Now, another thing, you notice I did the same thing over there. And if you're using a piece of stud, do kind of the same thing. Wherever you're going to run the wire, notch your, you don't want to run it this way. You don't want to run it like this, because while it's easier to tie your wires at first, now you're going to have to notch this out where your wire is going to go, or you're going to have a big old loop around this, and then as you put weight on it, it's going to tighten and start to bend this and either sag or collapse depending on how much weight it is. But if you hang it this way, now your wires are going to be straight and have plenty of support. And then your wire coming down is also going to be basically straight. So you're going to have nice tight loops on your wires versus having a big old loop around this. Now you could notch this. I tried that in the past when I was still learning. I tried to notch it right there and then put my wire there. But then because you did that, now you've eliminated this brace. So now it can crumple and you basically lose all your strength. Now this one I only have notched right here because this one, this one is gonna go like that, and I flattened it with my pliers as well so that it sits nice and flat and the screw goes in fully. That's gonna go there, and the wire is gonna go there, and that's where I'm gonna drop my main wire. I'm gonna drill a hole about right in between this one and that one. I'm going to drill my 1/4 inch hole there for my wire. But that is how you run trapezes in a high quality, high strength manner that no inspector is going to fail. And unless somebody really, really dings it bad, it itself will never fail, regardless of the weight put on it. Alright, so next thing with hanging trapezes, you can see I left a little bit of room there, not much, but I know that for a fact that this duct does not get insulation because they already ran insulation on everything that gets it. So leaving just about a 1/2 inch of room on uninsulated duct is fine. But if it is insulated, you want to leave like 1.5 to 2 inches typically, or if it's a very large duct that's going to get thick insulation, like a real big main line, trunk line, then you want to leave more like 3 to 4 inches. But in this case, it's a smaller duct, and this one doesn't. But other than that, like typically that insulation is about 1 to 1.5 inches thick. So you want to leave at least 1.5 to 2 inches below the duct to hang your trapeze. Now that one, you can see I went ahead and flattened it and screwed it right to the side of the stud because it's exposed there. But right here we have a smoke wall, which they still need the fire taping. But anyways, in this one, I'm going to be hanging this right here, like so. You can turn it up or turn it down. It's kind of irrelevant. I kind of like to turn it down because then it wants to, well, yeah, it really doesn't matter, honestly. But you can see here, again, I used my pliers and flattened the spine. That way it sits nice and tight and flat together, which makes it a lot easier to screw in and also makes it stay straighter. And then that's gonna catch my wire over here, which will keep it off the duct, like so. It'll keep it off the duct like so, and it'll also keep it off anything else up there as well. And that'll be it for this run of main for this drywall suspension. Right, I forgot to mention what else I was going to talk about while talking about this. When possible, try to get your kicker screwed in, obviously, to a stud, especially if it's going to be a large one, or trapeze, sorry. Same goes for kickers. But if you can't get it to hit a stud, if you need it, like, say, over here or something, what you can do is get something heavy gauge, preferably like 18 gauge, 16 gauge, 14 gauge, something like that. Like a piece of cold roll channel would be great. And split it like this. Screw it in, 2 screws into this stud, 2 screws into this stud, and then you can attach your kicker or trapeze to right here. Now, I'm not wearing my gloves right now just to make it easy for the video because I video control and whatnot, but I do wear gloves normally. In fact, they are sitting where I set those down at. I set them right in here. But the other thing main thing I wanted to talk about though with a trapeze, or with a ceiling grid and both ceiling grid and drywall suspension, for the most part, where they have these holes lined up at the main, I'm kind of holding this weird it's upside down here, but if you were to go to tie your wires, if you set this to the height you want, grip the wire right here with your pliers, about right there. And then what you want to do, let me see if I can make this stay put here. If I can move this aside just a little bit. Can we see the wire in the frame? Okay, let me rotate this just a little. There we go. Okay, so is that in the frame now? I can't tell. No, it's not high enough. Let's see if I can tip it back some more. I don't know if it's gonna stay. Can you see that wire? The wire I'm trying to look at. Okay. So what you want to do to get it nearly perfect every time is, granted this is upside down, you grip it right here, but since I'm going the other way and I have a good eyeball, I'm going to want this up about here, so I want to grip it about, get over this tiny sprinkler line here, I want to grip it about, I got to readjust that, I need 2 hands, about maybe a big eighth lower than that, it'll come down about an eighth. Grip it with your pliers and then bend it with your other hand against your pliers. Now there's other ways to do this, but I found this to be the most accurate. You can be almost laser perfect every time like that. Oops. And then this one I'm installing that way, like so. There we go. That'll hang pretty nice right there. So let me grab my screw gun here. Try not to vibrate the ladder too much. We'll pop these screws in real quick. Want that about right here. there. And one more. There we go. Got it right here. There we go. Solid. And then I'll put my. Oh, did they fall down? Whatever. Alright, so this is pretty tight here, but what you want to do, get a nice tight bend on that wire, because that holds its position a lot better. There's a lot less flex to it that way. Bend it over pretty tight, 90-degree angle, or perpendicular to your main or your trapeze. And then it's pretty tight right here with this damn duct and sprinkler line, but I believe the main standard is that you need 3 turns minimum, and they need to be it needs to be about 1 turn per inch. That is your bare minimum. Now some things may have a higher spec, but that's like a general minimum. There we go. I got 1, 2, 3. So there we go. 3 ties, nice and tight. There we go. Just barely below the duct there. About 1 inch on this one. That's good. My main's gonna be about here, so I'm gonna want a hole about right there. Now normally I wouldn't bother drilling additional holes, but this is because these are so low and close to the ceiling height, you want your drop to be pretty close to center with your main. But if these were, say, you know, up here, then a couple inches, like, you know, 2 or 3 inches of splay or whatever is not a big deal. But a good rule of thumb is no matter how long it is, try not to have more than 6 inches of splay max, and that's in a fair amount of distance. From about 3 feet, you don't really want more than 3 inches of splay. Splay being your wire off at an angle. So I'd say rule of thumb about this far, you don't really want your wire to be splayed more than about that angle, because then you start getting into side loading the fastener and tensioning the wire, and it's just not rated to support that way. So try to avoid that much splay whenever possible. Alright, on the subject of trapezes, this is more of an old school method using cold roll channel, or they sometimes call it black iron, but it's actually called cold roll channel, or abbreviated CRC. See, if you ever see something calling out for CRC, this is what it is. Usually it's as a wall brace in metal stud walls, exterior typically, but a lot of time you'll see it like this to use as a trapeze for suspended ceiling, or even other things as well. But what you do is you cut a little like 1/4 inch flare like that to keep the wire from going off the end, and then while it's not required, you can put a screw up above like that, and then when you tie your wire, you can tie it around that screw as well, and that'll keep it from sliding anywhere, so that wire won't slide along your trapeze, which would raise or lower it depending on which way it slides. And then while this has some slide to it, you could also lock that in place with a screw or two if you wanted to, which I may yet, I don't know. Or if you can try if you want with pliers to tie it extra tight, but it's not necessary really. I want to be about right there, to be honest. That's where I'm going to hang mine, right there for this trapeze. You can see my little mark right there for the main. So there's that main, there's my other main. They're only 11 3/4 apart, but then we'll go 4 foot and then over to there, and that'll miss all of the can lights I marked out yesterday.